life that makes you qualified to run for mayor?
We'll start with Mr. Fernandez, yes.
So I'm going to start by answering your question by responding to Matt's accusation that I pandered to you. If you're going to make an accusation, don't walk away from it. Stand by. So I've spent a big part of my professional life working with young people. There's a youth agency in town called LEAP. I was the first executive director and one of the founders of LEAP. It's not pandering. I actually would sit down with young people in this city first, because I do think young people have to have an essential voice in the future of the city. And it's not pandering to believe that young people are not just something that we rhetorically say are our future, but we actually believe that they have a part of the answer to make the city great. So I'm not going to back off the fact that I actually would sit down with young people first. The second thing I would say about why I would sit down with young people first, and as it relates to my experience, is as someone who has worked to build youth programs in this city, I found that I get tremendous energy from hearing from young people. And so it's not just that I would talk to you first. I'd make sure that that was something that happened every week that I sat down with young people. Because I think we need to know what's going on in our schools if we're going to try to make them better. I think we need to know what's going on in our neighborhoods if we're going to try to cut crime. We can't just guess at it as adults. We need to talk to young people and hear their voices. So I've run a large youth agency here in town. I did that for 7 years. I was the director of economic development in the city of New Haven. I did that for 5.5 years, and before that I was head of the Livable City Initiative for a year, just over a year. When I was head of economic development, I did big projects, like I brought IKEA to Long Wharf, brought Gateway Community College downtown, helped restructure the Schubert Theater so it was able to continue because it was in tough financial times, but also built a lot of housing in neighborhoods and made sure that community groups had a voice in City Hall. In the last 7 years, I built a company. It's a small company. There are 5 of us in the firm. And what we do is we work on social justice issues around the country. So, for instance, we developed the strategy to end the death penalty in Maryland this year, and we were successful in that. We worked with the NAACP last year to register about 450,000 people to vote around the country. And so that's work that I think is important, the ability to run a business, but also to be very committed to social justice causes. So I guess I went to college. I think that was probably a good thing. I went to a little college up north called Harvard. And then I came here, actually 23 years ago, to New Haven to go to Yale Law School. I'm a graduate of Yale Law School. So I hope that answers the question. All right.
Thank you. Would you like to speak on behalf of Mr. Winfield?
Well, I don't actually think it's appropriate for me to speak on behalf of Gary in this, but I'll tell you by myself why I'm supporting Gary. I decided to work in politics not because of the great hours or the great money, because quite frankly, that doesn't exist. I left a high-paying job because there was an election, and after the outcome in 2004, I was disgusted that all I did was vote. And I realized I could do so much more. And so I left, a very comfortable living because I knew I had to be working for the right people who count, people who are important. And when I met Gary Holder Winfield, I knew immediately. I knew after 2 seconds when he opened his mouth that he was the right type of person. Gary Holder Winfield isn't a regular, typical politician. When most people get elected to a legislature, they get along for a while. They wait years and years to build their power base and do favors and get along, go along. When Gary got in, he decided, I'm going after the death penalty. That's not what you're supposed to do. And everybody looked at him and they said, you're crazy. You're not going to defeat the death penalty. But he led the charge in our state to defeat the death penalty. that's about character. That's about bravery. He didn't wait 20 years to have the power where he was, you know, the Speaker of the House, where he could just push it through easily. He ground through. He got down, put his nose to the grindstone, and made it happen. And that's the type of person I want to work for. I want to work for the real type of person. That's why I work for Gary.
Thank you. Ms. Emerson.
So, I've lived in this region for 50 years, and I've told the story that when I was 13, my father drove through New Haven and took me to the Winchester Rifle Factory. And the reason he did that is that he had been at the medical school, and he was working with people in the Hill neighborhood during and after the riots there in the late 60s. And he was helping with medical help. But he was very touched by the fact that New Haven, even then, was changing, and that jobs were leaving. And so he wanted me to understand what was happening in the city. So we went to the Winchester factory, we drove around, and he said, when these factories close down, 100 years of people coming to New Haven for opportunity for jobs are going to change. And this is why people are angry. He wanted me to understand it wasn't that people that changed, it was that things were happening in New Haven. So for the last 35 years, I've had the opportunity to try to do something about that. I actually came back after I went to college and also went to graduate school here at Yale. And I was able, after running a magazine down in Washington, which was a wonderful experience, but one that I found wasn't sort of keeping me in touch with New Haven and my roots here, I came back and had an opportunity to start something called Science Park, which was actually buying from the old Winchester Rifle Factory each of the buildings in that factory area and turning them into something new. In this case, new factories, we hoped, but that actually didn't happen. They ended up being laboratories, we ended up being biotech companies, we started billions of dollars of biotech companies there, computer companies. Now, I was disappointed in Science Park because I felt that we should have had more manufacturing there. We actually should have been able to touch the community even more. So after that, I wanted and had the opportunity to do something even bigger. I was asked to come and run the Chamber of Commerce, which was not only in charge of economic development for the city, working with the city, I worked with Henry and others, but we were also in charge of looking at policies for the whole region. And so in that job, I understood the competition between the towns outside of New Haven and New Haven. And I realized that we could never change the future of New Haven unless we had more understanding, more tax sharing, more cooperation. We had to really have a strategic plan to develop the whole region. Otherwise, companies and people would just leave New Haven. So I did that for 13 years. Did a lot of interesting things, some crazy things happened during that 13 years. One was that the Chapel Square Mall, which some of you probably have never heard of, but it used to be a mall in downtown New Haven, actually went out of business. And I bought it. And then our hotel went out of business. And I bought that too. And we brought in developers, and we saved that because there was nobody in town that had the money or the wherewithal to do it. We obviously worked with the city. But these were sort of very strange times in the 90s, and we couldn't let things fall apart. Now after that, I decided that it was time to actually start a business. So I started a software company. We raised a lot of money. We grew it. We ended up selling it to another company, another big software company. And after that, I decided to go to the state level. And I have had for the last 10 years the opportunity to do policy and also to help companies in technology, computer companies, biotech companies, aerospace companies, thousands of companies across the state. So I run something called the Connecticut Technology Council. We try to raise millions of dollars to invest in the state. I'm now on the education board for the vocational technical schools because this is a very, very important thing for us. So my career has always been about how does New Haven compete in the region, how does New Haven compete in the state, and how does the state compete nationally? So I've been practicing, I've been learning, I've been making contacts with business people, with government people. I've had the opportunity to travel to China and India and across the country. Representing the state, representing the city on trade missions and other things. And what I've learned is that the most important thing is for people to see that you can compete and that you are a place that are as good as any other. We're not competing with Bridgeport anymore, and we're not competing one neighborhood against another. We are competing to have the Chinese, we're competing to have people across this country believe in us and invest in us and have their companies come here. And so that's been my training. And that's the skill that I will bring as a manager, as a leader, and as an executive who has 30 years of experience thinking about the job of being mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Unruh.
Is it always this cold in here?
One of the first things that I will do as mayor is make sure we don't have the air conditioning on at the same time.
Last week, there was no air conditioning. So we need to find the moderate.
It's okay. I just took my jacket off and put it back on. So I've been a high school teacher. I've been an elementary school teacher. I've been a foreign service officer for 5 years with the U.S. government in Washington, D.C., Taiwan, and Hong Kong, studying economic policy and how it impacts the U.S. I have an MBA and a Master's in Environmental Management from Yale. And I've been an environmental consultant looking at ways to save money on energy through upgrading employee practices on how they manage things like air conditioning. But I think the most relevant experience I have and that I bring to the job is my time on the Board of Aldermen. If you want to be an effective mayor, you need to put yourself out there and make some tough decisions, because at the end of the day, everything that a mayor does can't be what everyone agrees on. And so you need to put yourself out there and make some difficult decisions. And if you look on the New Haven Independent on the register, you'll see my record, where I put in, I even have some constituents of mine in this room. You'll see that I made some tough decisions. I've done my research, I stood by my decisions, and that's something that I think is critical. 2 is you need to be someone that's compassionate, that's there with the people, alongside the people, not in an ivory tower. And if you talk with my constituents, or other people around the city that know me well, I am someone that is with the people, by the people. I show up to every meeting I could possibly show up to, because ultimately, if you're a mayor, you need to hear what people care about, because you represent the people. And that's something that I have a strong track record of. And it doesn't make a difference what you look like, where you're from, how much money you have. I'll be there to help you out. And I think the most important thing is someone that has strong integrity. And what does that mean? It means that when no one else is looking, what kind of decisions do you want your mayor to make? And as many of you may have heard, there's something called the Democracy Fund in New Haven, which is public financing. And this is something that a number of the candidates, including myself, are participating in. Gary, the candidates on this panel that are presented are Gary and myself. And what the Democracy Fund does is it's a public financing tool that allows candidates to opt out of big PAC money and big contributions from developers and other people that get kickbacks from the city. I'm opting into that because I want to underscore that I'm going to be a mayor of integrity and make the right decision for everyone in this city, and that I don't answer to big developers and people that give me big checks so I can run my campaign, but I answer directly to the people. And I have a proven track record of integrity and of strength in making tough choices and of compassion.
Thank you.